Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Do I Have Time For This? The series that looks at old and new video games from indie to AAA and everything in between to help you figure out if you've got the time to play, finish, 100% complete a game, or to just leave it in your backlog to forever gather dust. Today we're donning our fishbowl helmets to time travel either side of an apocalypse in Cronos: The New Dawn. From the creators of the Silent Hill 2 remake Bloober Team, this is finally a new third-person horror IP that manages to be both frightening and engaging. You play as protagonist ND3576, a traveller who has been chosen by the Collective to move through time, collecting the essences of high-value individuals on the timeline who may know how to stop the outbreak known as the Change, and syncing what is essentially their personalities to the terminal. Generic sci-fi terminology aside, I think the Polish developers managed to create a game very reminiscent of Dead Space, and whilst you could call it a rip-off or reductive, I think the themes presented here along with the solid gameplay make this game worth a look. As usual, this game footage was captured on my high-end PC, and with me capping the frame rate at 60 FPS, I didn't see a single drop frame, stutter or glitch for the entire run-through, save for a weird lighting glitch very near the start, restricted only to one single area. This is truly a well-made horror outing from a technical perspective, despite the fleshy horribleness of it all on full display. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the video, and if you want to go the extra mile in terms of support, you can now become a channel member to get some extra perks for only $1.99 a month by clicking the join button below. Now without any further delay, it's time to plant our anchor, tune our anomalies, and dive into this Polish sci-fi nightmare. Cronos starts off by giving you a lot of sci-fi jargon from the get-go, introducing us to our very robotic and one-note character in the Traveller, who I have to be honest, has an absolutely ridiculous helmet that I only find more distracting the more the game goes on.
Your faith will return, just as sure as the sun will rise.
Sounds like a long shot.
Look, there's always an explanation for all this so-called phenomena.
Maybe you're right. It was probably just the creasels.
And when I get through with them, I doubt you'll be seeing anything strange on this farm for a long time. We'll see. You all right, Tom? Get some rest.
As I said in the intro, your job is to extract key people from the past and merge them with the Collective, an organisation created to supposedly help stop the Change, who activate a new single traveller every time one falls, a bit like sleeper agents. It's this core mystery and lore of the world Bloober Team creates that honestly made me not want to put the game down. You're drip-fed such little bits and pieces throughout the character interactions at the start of the story that it really keeps you engaged and wanting to find out more. It's also fairly evident just from the first couple of hours of the game that Cronos is heavily inspired by the COVID pandemic of 2020, where in the past version of the world, everyone is stuck locked into their rooms in quarantine, just like we were. The feeling of loneliness and isolation for our traveller is ever present, and you can feel their need for human interaction slowly creeping in throughout the course of the game as they meet new multi-layered characters who are embroiled in the mystery of the outbreak. This desolate and isolated vibe is incredibly intense, and there's a fantastic level of claustrophobia and paranoia the further into the game you get, and I specifically want to shout out the hospital section as a fantastic showcase of this, where I really felt like the game stood on its own two legs as a new horror IP that we should be celebrating. Vibes aside, this game will unfortunately always be compared to Dead Space because of how much of EA's horror game DNA Cronos borrows. Not just the idea of something twisting humans into a gory amalgamation of flesh with an unreliable narrator and a mind-bending plot around sinister higher beings, but down to the very gameplay and level design itself. Cronos is a slow-moving game. ND3576 is extremely weighty and deliberate in their movements. Shots feel chunky and impactful, as do the melee attacks. Like with Dead Space, there are no dodge buttons or parry mechanics, and there's even a very satisfying stomp move to make sure these abominations have truly kicked the bucket. There's also some fun zero-gravity sections which mess with your idea of space, and whilst like the other gameplay features it has been done before, even in Dead Space itself, it never gets boring to walk on the walls or ceilings in a sci-fi game. The world itself is extremely detailed and has two formats, the past and the present. In the past, everything is more or less still intact. You can see signs of civilization, hear people talking in their homes during lockdown, and you can traverse snowy streets, as the game is set at Christmas time. The progression is linear, but there are a multitude of hidden paths, optional buildings and tucked away nooks and crannies for collectibles, crafting materials and ammo to hide away in. The lore items you find in the world come in the form of letters, posters and recordings that really help build the world Bloober Team created. In a rare move for me, I was actually invested in finding them and reading them all this time around. The future sections on the other hand are a hellscape, with pieces of floating buildings, entire structures leveled, bodies piled high in the streets and biomass everywhere. I definitely preferred the past sections as they were infinitely more interesting to go through due to us being a time traveller sneaking through an existing society, but who doesn't love a good post-apocalyptic wasteland?
Something nasty's living just around the corner from here. It's only a matter of time before there's some real trouble. What's really too bad is it'd be a nice spot for a new settlement. In fact, I know some folks that'd love to set up there if it was safe. If you could make sure the old workshop there is still in one piece, anyone who decides...
What ties all of these locations together is the fantastic score. Very 80s sci-fi movie inspired and always spot on for the situation, whilst not being overbearing and ever present, allowing for silence to create some great tension and genuinely good jump scares in spots, as the game has you struggling to believe what's a real enemy and what's all in your head. It's very rare for a horror game with this much third-person action to still be scary, but it really does have its moments of pure tension. The truly unique innovation in Cronos: The New Dawn is the enemy system they've implemented in the game. The mutated humanoid enemies are known as orphans, that came about during the viral outbreak known as the Change. The enemy variety isn't particularly high here, I have to say, with only about 6 or 7 variants to fight outside of boss encounters. However, what is different about them is the fact that they merge. What this means is that all of the enemies are driven by the same goal, to become whole with each other. As a result, if an enemy spies the body of another on the ground, they'll immediately drop whatever they're doing and go and merge with it. In doing so, they become a much stronger form, doing more damage and having more health, and getting spikes and sometimes armor to change their look. The only way to stop the merge is to rush over and either set them on fire using your flamethrower or hit them with a headshot. This is a great system we've not seen before, and really adds a sense of tension to an enemy encounter, as if one manages to escape and merge off screen, you're going to have a much tougher time with things. I do feel like the system was a bit underutilized and a bit underbaked, as the enemies only upgrade to stronger versions of themselves instead of entirely new species or upgrading to the big brute enemy type, but I feel like it did the job good enough to feel fresh, something I'd like to see improved upon in a sequel. Something else I didn't expect to be so engaging was the boss fights, of which there's actually quite a few in the game. They aren't always just big monsters either, they take different forms and have different ways to beat them, with the majority requiring you to carefully manage your sources of fire in the arena. Unfortunately, there's only really lore tied to a few of them, but they're still really good survival horror bosses nonetheless. And this gets me onto what I believe to be one of the best aspects of Cronos: The New Dawn, the difficulty. I'm by no means a Souls snob or someone who wants every game to be difficult, but Cronos does something very few games tend to do. It sets one difficulty at the start and gives no option to change it or make it easier. This is perfect for true survival horror fans. It makes you aware of the arenas you fight in, how to manage explosive barrels, and makes you picky about what shots you take and which ones you don't. How to kite multiple enemies so you can hit them all in one go with the shotgun. It's perfect.
Oh, we're so sorry to hear about your brother that passed away. He gets 5 big booms. Boom! 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 Boom!
Each shot of your weapons can be charged for extra damage, and you more or less have to make the most of the very limited ammo you get. If you try and play this like a modern Resident Evil game, you will lose. Sometimes you just have to run away from the fight entirely, rather than waste valuable ammo and health resources, and that's exactly what survival horror should encourage. You also have an extremely limited inventory, and things like your anti-merging flamethrower take a full slot for one use of it, meaning there can be quite a few trips back to the item box. You're also able to quick craft ammo and healing on the fly simply by holding that quick menu button down, a very immersive and handy addition. I do get the feeling the item drops are a bit like they are in Resident Evil 4 too, being dynamic and ever changing in nature, as you always seem to get ammo or health just as you run out. Personally, I never struggled with the game and only died 3 times in my first playthrough, mainly due to upgrading my inventory limit over my total health. But make no mistake, it can be tough if you don't play a lot of survival horror games. I tended to have quite a lot of ammo and health stockpiled too, so it's very much possible to end the game with a lot of supplies like I did if you play the game how Bloober Team wants you to. When it comes to the weapons themselves, there's actually a reasonable amount of them given the length of the game, and they're off the beaten path to reward puzzle solving and exploration instead of just being given to you or bought in the upgrade station. Speaking of which, you can upgrade your weapons similar to Resident Evil 4, only unfortunately there's no unique upgrade at the end of the upgrade tree.
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
As part of the story, people you extract go into your phylactery, a place in which you seemingly store people's consciousness or personality. You can only store 3 however, and as you find more you'll realise they all have very unique passive buffs that they can grant to the traveller, with some being very useful. Aside from the combat, and for me the final thing to mention gameplay wise, is the puzzles. As I mentioned before, you have zero gravity traversal to do, alongside some temporal rifts to manipulate, changing a piece of terrain or debris into platforms to let you pass through a doorway for instance. There are some of your classic survival horror puzzles as well, like ordering items, connecting up fuses, and using a file to help play some things, so even the old school fans are happy. So let's get down to it. How long does this game take? I completed the main story 1 time, going through every optional path and side door, and I finished on 13 hours played. If you think finding cute cats, lore items, essential upgrades and ammo is making the game too easy, the main story will only take around 10 hours. If you're a true survival horror fan and want to obtain 100% completion, you'll need to finish the game at least 3 times, which will take around 28 hours, depending on if you follow a guide. The achievements here aren't too tough to get, as most are simply for completing the main story and upgrading things. The true hard achievement is for completing the game on hard mode, which only unlocks after finishing the game once. If you're a survival horror fan and can get past what can be quite a difficult opening section of the game, I think you more than get your money's worth here. With an extensive single player experience of around 10 hours minimum, it's difficult to keep things engaging and scary for that long, but Bloober Team managed to pull it off. When it comes to respecting your time, this is where it can get a bit hit or miss due to the genre it is. By design, autosave isn't generous, and you might find yourself having to run back to a save point if something comes up in the real world, which for me, happened a lot of the time. I recommend carving out an hour or 2 for this to get really immersed, as it isn't really friendly to people only wanting to play 20 minutes at a time. Without hesitation, I fully recommend Cronos: The New Dawn. Bloober Team have done something incredibly difficult in this era of gaming. Create a new horror IP that's actually scary and engaging, rather than just being a non-stop jumpscare fest. I love the world that the Polish development team have created here. It's a fantastic representation of the isolation and mistrust we went through during the pandemic, and how easy it is for those in power to very rapidly lose control of the situation. The game looks beautiful, sounds haunting, and offers tried and tested gameplay that harkens back to the prime days of survival horror like the original Resident Evil 4 and Dead Space. Whilst I do think a lot of the design, tone, and core gameplay is heavily borrowed from these 2 titles, the intrigue and mystery surrounding the world and story is more than enough to say this is a game that's definitely worth playing from start to finish. Where the story ends up is something you definitely won't expect, and it fully explains what you've been doing throughout the game, which when you learn the truth, is truly horrific subject matter. This is a fantastic first outing for a brand new IP, and I sincerely hope we get a sequel in the franchise that doubles down on the horrific merging mechanic, that offers new and fresh gameplay ideas on top of the well-crafted world and story to make it a true 10 out of 10 game. That being said though, this is still highly recommendable. You should go play this now, especially if you're a horror fan. Do you have time for Cronos: The New Dawn? On this channel I like to give my thoughts on the game alongside an in-depth look at the time you have to invest, because time is precious, right? If you enjoyed the video or found it useful, feel free to like and share. If you want to see more reviews, deep dives and topical videos, subscribe to the channel, and drop any suggestions for future videos down in the comments. And finally, if you want to come chat with me, you can find me over on x.com/gracious_rhino. I'm Gracious Rhino, look after each other, and I'll catch you soon.